Hi, I'm Scott Shelley with TJM Investments here for Successful Farming Magazine and Agriculture.com on the day after the report that we just had yesterday, Tuesday the 12th. No real shockers in it. I expect maybe beginning, I guess the way I felt, the beginning of, before the number came out, before 11 o'clock, we had the week longs exiting the market. They just didn't feel like there was any conviction and maybe didn't feel like they were going to get what they wanted out of the USDA. So we saw the market sell off rather tough. And then right after the numbers, we saw maybe the week shorts really say, hey, we didn't get enough here. We didn't see the yields as high as we'd liked, or we didn't see production as high as we wanted to see it. So the weak shorts kind of cannibalized themselves on the way out yesterday. So it was a tale of two cities. Kind of interesting to see what happened. Today, the settle was real quick. December corn settled up 3/4 of a penny. Not really much happening there. We also had wheat down about 5 3/4 and beans down 12 3/4. So still that negative tone that's carrying through. Weather's still very good. Not a ton of change there. Two things I'll harp on. Number one is let's revisit that $3.50, $4 strangle. This is going to be the last time because I know you're sick of it by now. But remember, we sold it at 20 5/8. The first week we had a profit of 2 or 3 cents right away. The second week, not so much. More time decay came out. Well, this week you've seen what happens after a USDA report, what happens to volatilities. And they've been absolutely slaughtered. Absolutely crushed. Yesterday, right after the number, prices got cheaper all across the board as far as volatilities go. Beans, wheat, and corn, but corn specifically. And then again today, we saw a ton of new speculative money selling strangle. So that tells you that the supply and demand for options, there was way more oversupply. So the prices were driven down. So that strangle that we sold, the $3.50, $4.50 for about 20 and a half, 20 and 5/8 cents, 20 and 5/8 cents. That today, I believe it settled at 12 and a half cents. 12 and a half cents, and we still got a decent amount of time left in that December expiry. So that's giving you, we had the calls and puts settled between, say, 5 and change, 7 and change. So that's going to give you an idea about what happens when this market has no expectations for any move really outside of those parameters. And seeing that we kind of rode back up into the middle of that $3.50 to $4 area, that's been the reason why volatility has been crushed. And when I say crushed, it's been a good couple of days that if you were long options in the hopes of some big movement, you got hurt, and you got hurt bad. The other thing I'd like to say is I brought this up a couple of days ago to not a lot of fanfare, but it's something I want to keep an eye on. I'm a little nervous about what's happening in Russia and how that could affect us here. And what I mean by that is there's a long domino effect, but stay with me on this. Russia and the Ukraine having some sort of tit for tat about what they're doing with sanctions and what they're not doing with sanctions. And that's obviously, you've heard, brought Europe into the fray. So if there is some sort of Russia versus Europe tit for tat as far as sanctions and exports and imports, you could see Europe suffer probably more. And I say that because Germany's right next to the situation, and they're starting to show some cracks in their economy. Investor confidence got slammed yesterday in Germany, something we weren't expecting. And we're watching those things with a keen eye because as Germany goes, so goes Europe. Germany's right there, something to keep an eye on, because if Germany does start to falter, and I think she is, then that's going to cause Europe to falter and then ultimately come over to the States. And if that's the case, the reason why I bring that up in the big picture is, let's keep an eye on this. We're near some recent lows in all three, corn, wheat, and beans. And if we do see some sort of systemic sell-off of just asset classes in period, as investors say, go to cash, and I'm not trying to beat a fearmonger drum here, I'm just trying to say, keep this in mind. You could see some new fresh legs lower and some new fresh lows. I'd like not to see that, but that's something that I think is got to be on the forefront of others' minds. I brought it up today to some other industry guys, and they think that that's something that's definitely got some legs. So keep an eye on what's happening. This is one of those cases where we do see what's happening around us globally really could start to affect us at home. And we had reports today that John Deere is scaling back output because they know that the farmer is not doing as well as they did over the last 3 or 4 years. So these things are starting to kind of hit the headlines, and it could have some more negative effects. The CRB index, which is the Commodity Research Bureau index, the CRB index is down. We've seen a lot of these deflationary things start to creep in, and just something I want to keep an eye on. So a couple big things here. Number one, that strangle we looked at, the $3.50, $4, $3.50 put, $4 call, December corn. We sold at 20 and a half. Now settles at 12 and a half. Now that's pretty darn good. That's an 8 cent. It's 8 cents in about 3 weeks. Number two is keep an eye on Russia and Europe and this tit for tat and these escalating sanctions, because that could be something that doesn't take too long to reach our shores and could start to affect our marketing plan. So those are the two big things I want to bring up. Maybe next week I'll bring a guest, see if we can liven this thing up. I'm sure you're sick of seeing my big head here. So ultimately, again, Russia and that strangle, the two interesting things I'm talking about today. I'm sure we'll get something new next week, but that's what I wanted to cover. So good to see you. Can't wait again for next week, but I'm Scott Shelody with TJM Investments here for Successful Farming Magazine, agriculture.com. I look forward to seeing you again next Wednesday, same time, same place.